But in the process of working with them in the first few years, I still got enough interesting cases so that I was getting a pretty strong feel for them. And the most incredible thing was how they match the goddesses for whom they were named. That's really the most spectacular thing that's come out of them, as far as I'm concerned, is that it just rules out a chance world. There is no way that you can talk about a world of chance and say that, an astronomer in Sicily who discovered Ceres in 1800 or 1801, I think it was 1800, and gets the chance to name it, and names it for the patron goddess of Sicily, for Ceres, and then you watch it in a chart, and you find it concerned with motherhood and taking care of people and nurturing people and this general protective kind of work over and over and over. One of my more amusing cases was early on when I was just starting to watch it, and this woman came in to have a chart done, and I'm really not very observant. Astrologers are supposed to just, be good character readers by being very observant, and I'm too busy looking at the chart to pay that much attention to the person. So I had vaguely registered that this woman was large, and she had loose-fitting clothes on. And I was studying the chart, and her progressed ascendant was conjunct Ceres. And I was very eagerly asking everybody what was going on in their life whenever I found the asteroids prominent, to see if I could get a feeling for them. So I said, looking at that asteroid, that ascendant on Ceres, "Are you by any chance thinking of having another child?" And she looked at me in some disgust and said, "I'm 5 months pregnant." And so I looked back, and I noticed that the ascendant had gone over natal Ceres 5 years before, approximately. And I said, "Did you by any chance have a child about 5 years ago?" She said, "Yes, as a matter of fact." If I'd known that, I'd have been more careful. One of the less comfortable events was much more recently. A friend of mine who was working with the asteroids, one of my students, had a girl come into her, and she noticed that her progressed moon was conjunct Ceres in the 5th house. Now let's see, it wasn't the moon. It was progressed Ceres conjunct the moon, other way around. Ceres on the moon in the 5th house. Okay, and Ceres, an aspect from Ceres will last maybe 4 years if it's going normal speed. Progressed Ceres can take 4 years or more to go over a point with 2-degree orb. So the astrologer said, "I hope if you don't want children, you are taking precautions, because the moon Ceres is a very fertile aspect, especially in the 5th house." And the girl said, "What's going on?" She said, "That's why I came here to have my chart done." She said, "I've been using rhythm method, and I've been trying to use astrological birth control. I've had 3 abortions in the last 6 months." She consciously did not want children. She wasn't in any position to have them. She didn't have a good enough job. She wasn't married. But her unconscious was ready for children, the Ceres and the moon together in the 5th house, and she was having them. She was conceiving them, let's say. Over and over and over, the same kind of thing. I remember another case where it was the progressed moon going over Ceres, first natal Ceres, and it was right there at the time I did the woman's chart in the 9th house. And in the fall, this was the spring several years ago, in the fall it was going to reach natal Ceres, or vice versa, I forget which. And so I asked her, and this time I did look to see the age range, and she was past the age of childbearing, obviously. And the 9th house is 5th from 5th, so it's potential grandchildren anyway, children of children. So I said, "Are you by any chance expecting a grandchild? It could be imminent, maybe in the immediate past or immediate future, or maybe in the fall." 2 aspects coming up about 6 months apart. And she says, "Well, yes, as a matter of fact, one of my kids is having another child in the fall, in October." I said, "Fine, Ceres strikes again." And she said, "You know what? Last night, my last unmarried child came home and told me he was getting married." So she's getting a daughter-in-law, the child added to the family by marriage, in the springtime with the moon on one form of Ceres, and in the fall a grandchild with it on the other form. And I've just seen lots of cases, but it isn't always children. Sometimes people who take care of older people who work in nursing homes, who are involved with relationships where somebody is mothering them or they're mothering someone else. And I do interpret it as a key to the person's own experience of the mothering quality in their own life, in their early life. What their mother was like, their relationship with their mother, as well as their capacity to be a mother to others. But it still has the work theme too, wanting to do a good job, wanting to do something well. So it's a key to the kind of profession or vocation that you're likely to be interested in. Now Vesta, as I said yesterday, or no, the first day, is more the total Virgo workaholic that can get so wrapped up in what it's doing that it can turn off personal relationships and get completely alienated from people. I've had my most dramatic cases have come with Vesta, both positive and negative. Some of those are covered in the Asteroid Ephemeris, the introduction, so I won't touch on all of them, but I'll tell you a few of the real spectacular ones. One of them was interesting because it was Ceres and Vesta. Maybe I said this the other day, but I can't remember what I've told you already. Vesta was right on the 7th cusp at birth, and Ceres was on Pluto in Cancer. Did I tell you about that one? No? Okay. She was born with Vesta exactly on the 7th house cusp, and her progressed Ceres, which was conjunct Pluto in Cancer in the 3rd house at birth, it had progressed onto the 4th house cusp and stayed there for like 20 years of her life, because it was made a station, turned retrograde, and just stayed on the 4th house cusp for years. And so I looked at that, and the Ceres on the 4th house cusp in Cancer says, I want to be mothered, or I want to mother someone. I really need an emotional nest of some kind. And the Vesta on the 7th cusp says, keep your distance. I can live for my work. I don't need anybody, unless they make the relationship their work, which they can do. So she had never married. It was very clear that she never wanted to marry. She was absolutely certain she never would marry. But she had stayed with her mother, lived with her mother for years, and took care of her, worked, of course, had a good job. And finally, 2 years before I did her chart, her mother had died. And at the time that I saw her, she was having stomach problems. And the doctors couldn't find anything wrong, tests negative, nothing, but her stomach hurt. So obviously her dependency needs were not being met, her need for that nesting security thing. So I told her that she just lost her security blanket and she needed another one. I didn't say it in those words. So, the need for closeness is a part of life. I always try to be tactful when I'm talking to the person. I'm not quite so tactful in lectures. And so everybody has a little bit of that baby. Everybody needs somebody to be close to. And if you can't find it with a person, if you really don't want to marry, maybe you could adopt a pet. Lots of people have a dog or a cat that they get that Cancer satisfaction from, of something that loves them, is close to them. And she said, no, I don't want to be tied down. I want to be free to travel now that my mother's gone. I said, well, maybe you can adopt an old lady in the neighborhood that you can get close to but not be totally responsible for her. But you just need to recognize your craving for someone you can care about and be close to is the source of the stomach pain. Well, I saw her a couple of years later, and the stomach pain was fine, all gone away. And she hadn't changed her life at all. She'd just become aware of that need, was getting a little closer to some of her friends, but mostly it was really awareness had taken care of it. Just knowing. And as long as it's pushed into the unconscious, it can take physical form and cause illness. As long as we're not aware of it and we're denying it and not looking at it, not recognizing it. Now, another case was much more spectacular, of a woman with Vesta exactly on the descendant at birth. She had a heavy Cancer Capricorn emphasis in the chart, which you'll remember is security-oriented and often very insecure, actually. And so she married. This is an elderly woman now. She's up pushing 60 now. That's not old. That's young, come to think of it. She is in the prime of life now. But in her day, when marriage was a thing, you got married, and there weren't very many spinster ladies. And so she got married, and yet she had that real difficulty in handling the close personal relationship. So what happened, would you believe, within the first year of marriage, she started getting nauseated when her husband approached her sexually. So pretty soon he became impotent, which is one of the Vesta things very frequently, the celibacy trip or impotence, voluntary or involuntary. And they're still together. She still castrates him, puts him down, rejects him, but lets him support her. And he's got his own reasons for staying in that kind of castrating relationship, obviously. But that was one of the interesting ones. Another one that I got really early on was a girl who had Ceres and Vesta conjunct together for a period of 4 or 5 years of her life, one progressing over the other in the 11th house. Loaded 11th house, pretty strong 10th house. Caught between need for emotional closeness with Cancer and Leo signs, and 10th house, 11th house, I got to be out in the world doing something bigger. I can't just limit myself to a family. So she had this real bind between personal nesting urge, personal life, interrelationships, and the career, being in the world, being free, having the power in her own hands. So when I saw that Ceres Vesta conjunction with considerable interest, as you can imagine, I said, what happened during those 4 years of your life? Well, she said, I had 2 children. There's Ceres at work. And I gave them up for adoption. There's Vesta at work. And she said, then my husband divorced me and got custody of the other 2 children because he claimed I was an unfit mother for giving those up for adoption. So she had 2 more children during the period, but she separated from 5 relationships during that period. And not long after that, giving a lecture, I mentioned that case, and a woman came in for a private chart a couple of days later, and when she walked in the room, she says, I want to know where Vesta is in my chart. And I said, okay. And during the period she was interested in, Vesta had been progressed on her midheaven. She says, okay, it was prominent, all right, what happened? And she said, well, I knew it after what she said in the lecture. She said, I conceived a child, I did not want another child, so I had an abortion, and I divorced my husband and let him take custody of one of the other children. Now, in contrast to that, when I mentioned the stories in the lecture, a woman came up afterward and says, I want you to know that it doesn't have to be that way. I have progressed Vesta on my midheaven right now, and it's true, I've got much more responsibility in my job. I'm having to put a great deal more into my work, but I'm maintaining my marriage too. I'm not walking out on my husband. And I said, fine. That's what I keep saying to people. You don't have to do these extremes. It's just you got to watch it when Vesta is prominent, that you don't do an all or none thing. Everything into the relationships and mess up the job, or everything into a job and not handle relationships. That's the real danger. It's the all or none thing. But at the same time, if the person does put